This is what? Can you imagine? You sit there, laughter in the air, listening beside a nice lady, and the feeling that builds in your chest as the world of celebrity begins to crack open in front of your eyes. Because after more than 40 years of making art in Hollywood, there are still moments of pure frustration and disbelief, moments where the charm fades and the masks slip, and that is exactly where the story begins. With a host who mastered charm and timing, who could turn any interview into a viral storm, yet quietly carried within him a list of guests who tested his patience beyond measure. Guests who arrived drunk, who treated the famous red chair like a toy, who crossed boundaries with their hands and their words, who turned light-hearted television into something uncomfortable and raw. And so the darkest names on his personal mental blacklist slowly took shape, beginning with a man whose talent was as undeniable as his chaos, a man lost in addiction and crude behavior, who arrived holding a bottle already half empty, who turned a simple interview into a battlefield of smoke, interruptions, and embarrassing familiarity, speaking carelessly to the women beside him, forcing strained smiles and quiet apologies, turning minutes into hours, leaving behind awkward silences so heavy they felt endless, laughing too loudly at his own jokes, drifting suddenly into silence, breaking the rhythm of the moment, forcing the host to become less of a conversational partner and more of a reluctant classroom monitor, watching every movement, every lighter, every misstep, feeling exhaustion sink deeper with each passing second as vague answers stretched thin, eye contact vanished, and warmth drained from the room until the magic of television was replaced with a cold, mechanical effort to simply survive the segment, leaving producers whispering that it felt like speaking to a wall, and viewers at home could sense the fatigue in every forced smile. Then came another figure, a man not loud with alcohol, but heavy with power, who forced his way into a space that was never meant to be commanded, a man who pushed and pushed until he was seated, not invited, sitting amongst brighter, more generous spirits, yet twisting every moment to shine the light back onto himself, interrupting, derailing, boasting, erasing the playful balance that made the stage alive, treating the show like a throne he had purchased with influence, ignoring boundaries as if they were invisible. And what unsettled the host most was not noise or chaos, but arrogance, the quiet belief that wealth excused indecency, that power erased etiquette, and years later, when the world finally saw the truth behind that smile, the memory of that night shifted from awkward to chilling, becoming a warning sign that evil does not always announce itself loudly, but sometimes walks gently onto the stage, smiling, charming, and hollow inside. The next presence was not cruel or loud, but perhaps more draining in a quieter way. A legendary actor whose talent shone brightest under camera lights yet dimmed completely in conversation. A man of few words, of cautious nods and polite silences, who sat like a closed book while energy danced around him, forcing the host to stretch every question, to carefully dig for reactions like searching for warmth in winter, feeling as if driving a bus full of chaos while one passenger sat still and unreachable, turning what should have been lively into something slow, drawn out, and strangely empty, not hated for arrogance, not despised for cruelty, but quietly disappointing because laughter never bloomed, because connection never sparked, because the engine of humor could not ignite where there was no fuel, and yet even in that stillness, there was something memorable, a calm that lingered long after the silence ended. But if silence was draining, chaos returned with a force that shook the walls, with a man whose energy spilled over the edges the moment he appeared, slurred words wrapped in bravado, laughter that slowly shifted from humorous to uneasy, eyes that sparkled not with wit, but with instability, jokes stepping off track until suddenly he was no longer seated, no longer contained, climbing into personal space, wrapping arms carelessly, turning the host's composure into a silent battle of control, smiling while tension flickered behind his eyes, the crowd unsure whether to laugh or look away, and though apologies came later, and explanations of too much drink softened public judgment, the moment remained burnt into memory as proof that live television is a thin line between laughter and discomfort, and even when he returned years later, sharper, sober, he could not resist flirting with darkness in his own past. dropping words that froze the air for a second before being lifted by careful wit and subtle redirection. Then there was another man, not wild, not drunk, not foolish, but cold, untouched by the playful rhythm that made the environment sparkle, a presence that answered without warmth, that listened without laughter, that stood still while energy moved around him. And the frustration did not come from rudeness, but from mismatch, from the way his seriousness sat heavy on a format designed for chaos and fun, making jokes feel like stones dropped into still water, pauses stretching longer than comfort. Aloud, the host left carrying weight that should have been shared, admitting quietly that some people never understand that the design was to be silly, not serious, light, not formal. And finally, the most difficult challenge of all was not born from ego or noise, but from complete withdrawal. A woman who simply did not want to be there, who answered in fragments, who left silence hanging like thick fog, who turned conversation into a painful tug-of-war where humor, teasing, softness, and clever tricks failed to spark even a flicker of connection, leaving the host smiling through discomfort, feeling powerless, dragging words forward like heavy rope, sensing the audience's tension as the air filled with uncomfortable gaps, not angry, not rude, just absent, emotionally distant, unwilling to rise to the energy of the moment, and in that absence, creating a kind of discomfort deeper than any chaos. Behind all of these moments, behind the stage lights and the polished smiles, was a boy born in a quiet Irish suburb, raised in a modest home by a hard-working father and a devoted mother, a child whose early humor and curiosity shaped a future no one could fully predict, growing through school performances, blooming through stories and laughter, stepping away from traditional study because the stage called louder than classrooms, arriving in London where life was harsh and money thin, surviving through odd jobs and late nights, finding a new name that would become a brand, pushing through obscurity with persistence, sharpening wit through stand-up, tasting television for the first time, building a style that dared to be bold, strange, and honest, creating not just a show, but a space where chaos could feel safe and awkwardness could turn into gold, earning recognition, praise, awards, and a reputation that stretched far beyond borders.